Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Planeschasers. My name is Seth Cross, and you can find me as The Seth Cross on Twitch and Twitter. Recently, I've collected a group of fantastic friends and Magic the Gathering players who all love the Planeschase format. For those who don't know, Planeschase uses a separate deck of cards that represent the different planes of the Magic multiverse. You start the game on one of these planes, and during each turn a player can roll the planar die in hopes of either planeswalking to a new world or ensuing chaos, potentially getting a massive benefit. Each initial roll of the die is free for the player, with each subsequent roll costing an additional mana, meaning 1 mana for the second roll, then 2 mana for the third, and so on. This adds a layer of unpredictable game states and is a ton of fun. If you go on to enjoy this video, I would be thrilled for you to leave a like on the video and comment on your favorite plane, play during the game, or cards played during the game. The interaction helps the YouTube algorithm to push this video to more viewers and helps the channel grow. My goal for 2024 is to end with at least 500 subscribers, so if you're not subscribed, please consider joining our community by hitting that subscribe button. Be sure to ring the bell to turn on notifications for future videos, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to today's players to introduce themselves and their decks.
Hello, I'm Jidayun. I'm playing 13th Doctor and Ryan Sinclair. Basically, we're gambling today. When he attacks, if I get a non-land that's his power or less, I cast it, and if I don't, then we all get to rejoice in the idea that nothing happened. And if I'm successful, 13th Doctor makes him bigger, and then the gambling gets easier as time goes on, just like in real life, right? And then there's extra combats so that we can gamble more, and then the top end is something like a Maelstrom Runner, which will do everything everywhere all at once.
I am Seth Cross. You can find me around the internet or at the Seth Cross. I am playing the Hobbit Precon upgraded, so this is Frodo Adventurous Hobbit and Sam Loyal Attendant. It exists to make food tokens. It's got to make second breakfast, third breakfast, brunch, dinner, blah 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 blah, and then sacrificing those food tokens for value. Like I said, this is an upgraded one. There are a few spicy upgrades in here, and it is, as you can see, unsleeved. So deal with it.
Hey everybody, I'm Mitch, 66 for 6 with Trample. You can find me on social media at MitchCompleated. I'm playing Arkellos, Lagoon Mystic. This is a landfall combo deck that uses Arkellos' ability to tempo out the table, and that's the whole thing. We're going to see how it goes.
Hey everyone, I am FrankensTCG. You can find me on Twitter at Frankens_1 or on other platforms, I believe as Commander the Gathering, I think. I'm playing Hakbal, the Surging Soul. This is basically stock standard Merfolk with about 10 cards swapped in and out from the precon. This precon was nuts. This precon out of the box is probably one of the strongest precons we've seen in a while. It's all about being Merfolk and +1/+1 counters, exploring. It's dumb and it's great and I love it.
Prior to the introductions, we had randomized the player order, so Jidayun was the first player. To kick things off, we flipped the first plane, Mount Coralia. This plane gains a pressure counter at each player's end step, and once we planeswalked away, that much damage would be dealt to all creatures and planeswalkers. The Chaos ability of the plane granted immunity to this damage for the game, making it massively important to either planeswalk early before committing to the battlefield, or rolling Chaos to avoid getting board wiped. Jidayun started off his turn with his free roll of the planar die, but was unable to roll Chaos or planeswalk. He played a Temple of Epiphany, which entered tapped and allowed him to scry one, choosing to leave the card on top. For my first turn, I drew my card and started with a Grey Pelt Refuge that entered tapped and gained me a life, going to 41. I took my free roll of the planar die and immediately rolled into Chaos, meaning I was immune from the damage and had nothing more to worry about from Mount Coralia. Mitch started their turn with their free roll, but rolled a blank. They played an Opulent Palace, which entered the battlefield tapped, and then passed, making the pressure count a total of 3 for Mount Coralia. Franken drew his first card and played in Unclaimed Territory, naming Merfolk, to nobody's real surprise. He tapped that for 1, playing the infamous and dangerous turn 1 Sol Ring before choosing not to roll, and passing to close out the first round of the game. Jidayun drew the card he'd scryed last turn before playing a mountain and tapping both lands for an Arcane Signet. His free roll of the planar die was blank again, so he tapped the arcane signet to roll, still seeing a blank on the die before passing. No longer worried about the damage from the plane, I played a swamp and cast one of my commanders, Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit. Despite having the ability to shuffle via the partner whisk mechanic, I turned it down and passed my turn. Mitch started by rolling the die for free again, seeing another blank. They tapped the roll again, but still came up with a blank. Not wanting to commit to a doomed battlefield, they played a command tower and passed the turn. Franken started by playing an island and then rolling the planar die, getting Chaos to earn immunity to the explosion of Mount Coralia. Tapping for 2, he made another attempt to walk away from this plane, but received a blank and tapped 2 for Nakanzel, Current Conductor, before passing the turn. Jidayun started round 3 by playing Cinderglade, which entered the battlefield tapped. He made his first roll attempt but rolled a blank. He made another attempt after tapping the arcane signet but still saw nothing. He decided to do things the hard way, tapping 2 more mana to pay for TARDIS, hoping to force the planeswalk next turn. I started my turn by tapping 1 for a Delighted Halfling before playing a Sandstep Citadel. In the interest of advancing the game beyond this first plane, I used my free roll but rolled a blank. Not having anything else to cast, I tapped 1 more and still received a blank on my second roll before moving to combat. Mitch had no blockers, so I sent 1 commander damage their way before passing the turn with nothing to do in my post-combat main phase. Mitch still wanted to get away from this plane as well, so they kicked off their turn by rolling Chaos and being given immunity to the impending doom. Only Jidayun must worry about the damage now, as Mitch plays a forest and taps to cast a Sky Shroud Ranger. They also tap 2 to pay for Zimone, Quandrix Prodigy before passing the turn. Franken made the first big move of the game, playing 4 for his commander Hawkball of the Surging Soul before playing a Simic Growth Chamber and bouncing an island back to his hand. He immediately moved to combat and Hawkball triggered, revealing Twist and Turns on the first Explorer. This added a counter to Hawkball, which then triggered Nakanzel, who also gained a counter. With Twist and Turns still on top, Nakanzel got a second counter from Exploring, and Franken moved combat, declaring Nakanzel to attack me for 4 damage. With no beneficial blocks, I took the damage, and Franken passed the turn onto Jidayun. Not wanting to force the planeswalk unless he absolutely had to, and thus lose his creatures, Jidayun tried to roll the die but received a blank. Paying 1, he made 1 last attempt and still received nothing, so he resolved to tap 3 for one of his commanders, the 13th Doctor. The Doctor tapped to crew the TARDIS in a massive flavor win before Jidayun moved to combat and declared the TARDIS attacking Franken. The attack triggered TARDIS' ability, and Jidayun opted to planeswalk, which caused Mount Coralia to deal 12 damage to all of his creatures while the rest of us enjoyed immunity. Since the planeswalk was an attack trigger, Mount Coralia killed both of Jidayun's creatures before combat damage resolved and Franken was spared the damage. Our second plane of the game was Horizon Bows, stating that all permanents untapped on each player's untapped set, essentially giving us all a Seedborn Muse effect. The Chaos effect allows the player to search for 3 basic lands, putting them onto the battlefield tapped. The turn was passed to me, and during my untapped step, everyone untapped all of their permanents before I played a Swamp and tapped 3 for my second commander, Sam, Loyal Attendant. I immediately moved to combat, having Sam trigger and create a food token. Utilizing his static cost reduction, I paid 1, tapped and sacrificed the brand new food token, gaining 3 life and going back to 40. I aimed Frodo as an attacker in Franken's direction, and Frodo triggered, having the ring tempt me for the first time. I chose Frodo as my ring bearer, naturally, giving him the ability that creatures without power greater than his could not block him, essentially giving him the Skulk ability. Since this happens on attack, Franken's large merfolk were unable to block, and he took the single point of commander damage. I rolled the planar die in my post-combat main phase and received a blank, and paid 1 to try again, getting yet another blank. I moved to my end step, and Mitch, who was fully untapped thanks to the Horizon Bows, tapped their permanents to assert dominance. As Mitch untapped, so did the rest of the table. They rolled for free, saying a blank before playing an island, and tapping Sky Shroud Ranger to play a swamp. They paid 1 to tap Simone to play Hidden Necropolis, which entered the battlefield tapped before playing Arkelos, Lagoon Mystic, for 4 mana. It's important to note that Arkelos even caused the basic lands from the Planeschase ability to enter the battlefield untapped should any of us roll Chaos. Mitch then passes to Franken, letting everyone untap. Franken plays a Temple of Mystery, which enters untapped thanks to Arkelos, and still scries 1, which he chooses to leave on top. Paying 3 and leaving 1 floating, Franken casts a Deep Root Elite before tapping 2 more and using the floating mana for Cumena, Tyrant of Araska, triggering the Deep Root Elite to gain a counter. Not wanting to risk rolling Chaos and losing the card on top of his library that he just saw via the scry, Franken announces his intent to move to combat, and I respond before Hawkball can trigger, paying 1 mana for a Path to Exile targeting the Hawkball. With the Explore triggers no longer happening, Franken resolves to lose the top card, searching for a basic forest from the path, which enters untapped, once again thanks to Arkelos. Now free to move to combat, Nikanzel attacks me again, and I choose not to block the 4 damage again. In his post-combat main phase, Franken uses a free roll of the planar die for blank, before paying 1 for another blank roll. Paying 1 more mana, Franken casts Twist and Turns, having the enter the battlefield trigger target his Cumena to explore. The scry portion of Twist and Turns resolves first, and Franken keeps it on top before reeling it to be a Path of Ancestry and putting it in his hand with the Explore. The Candle then triggers, and he's able to put the path onto the battlefield untapped because of Arkelos. Moving to Franken's end step, Mitch taps for 4, activating Simone and drawing a card. We'll untap during Jidayun's untap step, and he starts by paying 3 for Ryan Sinclair. Attempting the free roll, he gets another blank and moves to his end step. Franken chooses to tap 3 Merfolk to activate Cumena's ability to draw a card, and Mitch taps 4 to activate Simone to draw another card. I start my turn looking at the 4 untapped battlefields, choosing to roll for free and getting a Chaos as my reward. Before I search for my basic lands, Mitch taps 4 to activate Simone in hopes of finding a way to tap Arkelos, but can't find anything. They also activate Sky Shroud Ranger to play Manor Gate, choosing black as a secondary color. I choose to find 1 of each basic land in my deck, all of them untapped thanks to Mitch's commander, and I pay 1 to roll again and see if I can repeat my success, but can't, and change gears to pay 3 for Mary, Warden of Isengard. Thanks to the Partner With ability, I go to find Pippin, Warden of Isengard, which I pay 2 more mana for, and turn down the second Partner With shuffle. Moving to combat, Sam creates another food token, and I immediately pay 1, tap, and sacrifice the food to gain 3 life and get back up to 39. The food token also triggers Mary, creating a 1/1 white soldier with lifelink. I declare Frodo as an attacker against Franken, triggering Frodo's ability to have the ring tempt me for the second time and drawing a card. After damage in my post-combat main phase, I play the Evolving Wilds I drew from Frodo, sacrificing it to find a basic forest and getting it untapped thanks to Arkelos. With 2 mana left over, I pay for another roll of the planar die, and we planeswalk away from the Horizon Bows. The third plane of the game is Academy of Tolaria West, letting any player who ends their turn with no cards in hand the ability to draw 7 new cards. The Chaos effect has the player discarding their entire hand, and I move to my end step, and Franken taps 3 Merfolk to activate Cumena again and draw a card. Mitch starts their turn and Franken realizes we are no longer untapping everything on each untap step. Mitch starts by playing 3 for Augur of Autumn, which allows them to look at the top card of their library. Paying another 4, they activate Zamone to draw that card, before playing Holdout Settlement from the top of their library with Augur of Autumn. Mitch then taps Holdout Settlement to tap Arkelos, making a mana to cast an Expedition map. Unfortunately, because Arkelos is now tapped, the map enters tapped as well. Franken kicks off his turn with a Reliquary Tower, tapped thanks to Arkelos. Paying 2, he casts his Swiftfoot Boots, which is also tapped, but that doesn't stop them from fulfilling their function. Using the Path of Ancestry, Franken pays 6 to recast Hawkball, scrying from the land since Hawkball obviously shares a creature type with himself. The scryed card stays on top, and Hawkball enters tapped. Moving to combat, Franken has all of his Merfolk explore, with twists and turns technically giving Franken a scry each time. Since he already knows what's on top, this doesn't really matter, but he reveals a wave goodbye with the explore triggers. Each Merfolk gains a +1/+1 counter, with Nikanzel gaining an additional counter for each creature that explored for a total of 4 counters. We also catch that we missed Deep-Root Elite getting a counter when Hawkball entered, and Franken taps the Deep-Root Elite to have Kumena become unblockable, attacking me for 3 damage. Before ending his turn, Franken gives the planar die a roll for free, but can't manage anything but a blank to end the round. Jidayun starts off paying 2 for Farseek, finding a shelter ticket that enters tapped. He asks the table if anybody is willing to take 2 from Ryan to have an attack trigger, with Mitch agreeing to do so. Moving to combat, Jidayun swings Ryan at Mitch and reveals a Master Chef off the attack trigger. Unfortunately, since Chef costs more than Ryan's power, he can't cast a spell and the background goes to the bottom of his library while Mitch takes the 2 commander damage from Ryan. Giving the planar die a chance, Jidayun rolls a Chaos and discards his hand. He reveals an absolutely terrifying batch of cards with Scourge of the Throne, Savage Beating, Surge of Brilliance, Xenagos God of Rebels, Clara Oswald, Last Night Together, and Seize the Day. Oh my, we dodged a bullet. Moving to his end step, Jidayun draws a new hand thanks to Academy of Teleria West. Realizing that my food tokens will enter tap thanks to Arkelos and thus make it impossible for me to activate them the same turn I create them, I paid 2 to cast Go for the Throat, targeting the turtle. With the way cleared, I move to combat and Sam creates an untapped food token, which allows Mary to create another soldier. I pay the reduced cost of 1 to activate the food and gain 3 life to go back to 39, before declaring Frodo to attack Franken yet again. This is the 3rd time the ring has tempted me, so I'm able to draw and discard a card before drawing a card from Frodo, with Fell the Mighty being the board wipe that I discard. Franken takes his damage in our never-ending battle, and I pay 3 in my post-combat main phase for a Tireless Provisioner. Playing Ghost Quarter, I choose to create a treasure token, which does not trigger Mary again, as the ability only works once per turn. I take my free roll, and we planeswalk away, this time to Stencia. This province of Innistrad states that whenever a creature deals damage to a player for the first time in a turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter, with Chaos giving creatures the ability to tap and deal 1 damage to a player. My turn then passes on to Mitch. Untapping, Mitch plays a forest from the top of their library with Augur of Autumn. Tapping 6, we see the return of Arkelos and I respond, paying 1 and tapping Pippin to create a food token to trigger Mary to create a soldier. Since Arkelos is on the stack and hasn't resolved yet, Mitch can't tap Arkelos with Holdout Settlement, and I get both things untapped. They then activate the Skyshroud Ranger, playing a Black Dragon Gate and naming Green, the land entering untapped with Arkelos. Paying 2 more, Mitch casts a Cryptolith Rite and then pays 2 more, one of which from the tapping of an Augur of Autumn with Cryptolith Rite, to tap and sacrifice the Expedition map and searching for a Simic Growth Chamber, which they put in their hand. Looking at the top card of their library with Augur of Autumn, Mitch uses Holdout Settlement to tap Arkelos to make the mana for Open the Gates. Before searching for the gate, they roll for Chaos, giving their creatures the ability to ping players, and uses Zamone to do just that, taking a single life point off of Jidayun and giving Zamone a counter. While Mitch resolves finding their gate, Franken untaps, paying 4, and casts Wave Goodbye, returning all creatures without counters on them to their owner's hands. This will leave Franken's Merfolk and Mitch's Zamone on the battlefield, so Jidayun responds by paying 2 to cast Think twice, and drawing a card. I also respond, paying 1 to sacrifice a food token before Sam leaves the battlefield, gaining 3 more life and going to 42. With creatures back in hand, Franken plays an island, transforming Twists and Turns into Mycoid Maze. He then pays 4 for Tributary Instructor, triggering Deeproot Elite for another counter. Paying 1, Franken equips the Instructor with the Swiftfoot Boots for the haste and moves the combat. Hawkball triggers and all the Merfolk explore, with the first card being revealed to be the Ozolith. Franken recognizes the power of this card and chooses to leave it on top for all the explore triggers, each Merfolk getting another counter, and the Kanzo receiving 4 additional counters for a total of 5. Franken directs all of his fishy friends to attack me for a total of 30 damage, and I go from 42 to just 12. Hawkball triggers on attack, and Franken chooses to draw a card instead of playing another land, while all the Merfolk gain another counter after hitting me thanks to Stensia. Before moving to his end step, he pays 1 last mana and casts the Ozolith. Jidayun starts by playing a command tower and pays 3 mana to bring back Ryan Sinclair. Taking his free roll, he planeswalks us away from Stensia and to Bant. This plane gives all creatures Exalted, with Chaos allowing the player to grant a white, blue, or green creature a divinity counter, which makes the creature indestructible as long as the counter remains. Paying 3, Jidayun uses the flashback ability on Think Twice, drawing a card and moving to his end step, discarding a Crashing Footfalls to hand size. I kick off my turn paying 4 for a Mirkwood Bat, then paying another 3 for Sam Loyal Attendant. I pay 1 more for a Delighted Halfling before moving to combat and having Sam create a food token which has the Mirkwood Bat dealing 1 damage to my opponents. In my post-combat main phase, I use my free planar roll and we're immediately planeswalking away from Bant and to land in Velis Vel. This plane is Franken's Dream Vacation home, granting each creature +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares a creature type with it. Chaos rolls will allow a player to have a creature gain all creature types until end of turn. Fearing for my life, I pay 2, including a treasure token, having the Mirkwood Bat deal another damage to my opponents, and cast Sire's Sheriff. This enters the battlefield and I sacrifice my food, triggering the bats again, and exiling the Kanzel until the Sheriff leaves the battlefield. Franken is able to move the counters from the Kanzel as it leaves the battlefield to the Ozolith, and I state I did this in hopes that he points his aggression somewhere else with the extra counters, since it may seem like a waste on me at only 12 life. We move to Mitch's turn, and the card they draw has them very excited. They pay 4 and recast Arkellos from hand, then pay 3 for Retreat to Coral Helm. This has the rest of us very afraid as Mitch continues by playing a Simic Growth Chamber, which enters untapped thanks to Arkellos. This triggers the retreat, which they use to scry the top card of their library to the bottom. Before the Simic's bounce trigger resolves, they tap the land for 2 mana, then bounce the chamber itself. They're able to use one of the 2 floating mana to activate Zimone and replay the Simic Growth Chamber, which then triggers the retreat to untap Zimone. This demonstrates a loop that results in infinite mana. Mitch can tap the land for 2 mana, bounce it to hand, use 1 mana for Zimone, and net a mana, before doing this over and over and over again. They start dumping spells from their hand, including Ricksmith Thieves, Slumbering Isle, Sky Shroud Ranger, Augur of Autumn, and finally Zendikar's Royal. Now the infinite mana is also infinite landfall triggers, creating infinite elementals. With the Velis of Vel playing, Mitch's creatures get bigger and bigger the more they make. Casting an Altered Ego, Mitch copies my Mirkwood Bats, meaning that creating the elemental tokens will now cause us damage, and we can see the writing on the wall as Mitch kills the table. For all of my statisticians out there, this game was 7 rounds long and just over an hour and 20 minutes, and we visited 6 different planes, nearly averaging 1 plane a turn. We saw about 65 cards that were not basic lands, counting the cards that Jidayun discarded, and not counting duplications of the time some cards were played more than once, like the Simic Growth Chamber for example. Looking back at the game, I really regret that Jidayun couldn't get immunity from the Mount Coralia plane, because he basically had to nuke himself to advance the planeswalking portion of the game. I also believe that Hawkball is becoming a kill-on-sight commander in my eyes, as I've never seen him not accrue an insane amount of value with even just 1 combat phase and a couple of merfolk on the field. Mitch did let us know ahead of the game that their deck popped off with Retreat to Coral Helm, so seeing it happen was awesome. For my deck, I love playing Hobbits, but I have noticed that the life gain deck tends to draw the ire of the table. I may have to consider breaking from my current limitation on not having too many non-Lord of the Rings cards in the deck in order to optimize it with cards like Nadir's Nightblade, Disciple of the Vault, and Marionette Master. Either way, this was a fantastic and fun start to this Planeschasers series. I have to give a massive thank you to the other players, and I hope you check out all of their links, which you can find in the video description below. Remember, leaving a like on the video and a comment on whatever your favorite part or card was helps YouTube push the channel to new eyes and helps us grow as a community. Please also consider subscribing if you're not already, and join our free public Discord via the links below. Until next time friends, stay safe, happy, and healthy, and remember that gaming is for everyone. Peace!